The celebration's a manifestation. You know how we go, and you know what we're.
Hello, everybody. I think we're all here. Hello. Apologies if folks received the invite a little bit late. I think we're waiting for some audience members still to join us. So I'll talk slowly. Hello, everybody. My name is Emma Dunton, and I am the Programme Director for Season for Change, which is a UK-wide cultural programme inspiring urgent and inclusive action on climate change. We're delighted to welcome you, the online audience, and our panellists to the start of our second Season for Exchange series. The last one took place before the last lockdown, in fact. Running until July 2021, Season for Change showcases the creativity and leadership of the UK's cultural sector on the climate crisis through 15 artistic commissions, an open programme which everyone is welcome to join, and Season for Exchange, a series of free online talks and conversations over the next 10 weeks to inspire artists, activists, scientists and arts professionals to learn, share knowledge and talk about climate action and climate justice. It's a very exciting programme, and most of the sessions are taking place on Thursdays at this time, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we hope that you will join us over the next few weeks as well. So welcome everybody. Also just to let you know that this project is led by Arts Admin and Julia's Bicycle and delivered in collaboration with partners nationwide and supported by Arts Council England and the Paul Hamlyn Foundation. I'm going to do just a little bit of housekeeping now, and then I'll hand over to my colleague Salome. The conversation today will be recorded, so your mics and videos have been turned off. Please use the Q&A function for any questions that you have throughout. If you have any technical difficulties, our tech host, Eve Allen, is on hand to help resolve them. So please use the chat function to flag any issues and select to panelists. Otherwise, messages will be defaulted to all attendees. So if you want to say something specific to Eve, then select to panelists in the chat section. If you would like captioning, it's at the bottom right hand of your screen. You'll see a subtitles button next to the share screen. Please use this to view captions and or transcript. I think it's the captions. Socials. Great if you could join the conversation on your preferred social channel using hashtag Season for Change. So that is enough from me and all the housekeeping. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Salome, who will be introducing our panelists. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Hi everyone, my name is Salome Wagaini and I'm the Programme Manager here at Season. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. We'll have about just over half an hour of our two panelists kind of in conversation with each other. I'll have some prompt questions and then I'll open it up to the floor. Yeah, to kick us off, joined today by Kinsey Abdullah, an interdisciplinary artist, editor, producer and publisher. Her work as an artist educator is rooted in social justice, women's voices and histories. She's co-director of NUMBI, a Somalia-originated, African-centred arts and heritage organisation. And she's joined by June Lin Go, a cultural organiser working across art and culture, migrant movements and solidarity economies to explore creative shifts from extractive to regenerative ways of working. June Lin is founding organiser of Migrants and Culture, a network organising for culture without borders, co-founder of Asia Art Activism, a research network for Asian diasporic practitioners, and Sex with Cancer, cancer patient-led inquiry into illness and intimacy. June Lin is a recipient of Champion of the Year Women on the Move Award 2016, Live Art UK Diverse Actions Leadership Bursary 2017, and declined an MBE for Services to Equality in 2019. Welcome both. to kick us off, this edition of The Exchange, the theme is around artists and activism. Could you describe how your activism takes shape and how you make room for it in your practice? With Kinsey. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, back again. Yeah, so I'm an artist. I'm primarily working in communities. My practice is based around relational arts and socially engaged practice. Mainly working in participatory arts, engaging in my local community, primarily in the East End of London. I run NUMBI Arts. I'm a co-director of NUMBI Arts. And a lot of the active work that I do, both in my practice as an artist, mainly primarily an interdisciplinary artist, it is the work that I do at NUMBI, which is create a community and building a platform to both celebrate and engage our community. So the work, the platforms are always local with global conversations. So the idea is that we engage global conversations, issues around social justice, primarily with creativity at the heart of the work that we do. So that's mainly what I'm doing. And our latest project has been around, basically saving our heritage locally by starting the first Somali museum in the UK. So it's kind of a large project which needs quite a lot of energy and mobilizing around our community to make sure that the Somali community has been in the UK one of the oldest Black communities, and it's very important for us to create a safe space for our community, but also to engage with wider community around issues that are around collective healing and the importance of collaborating and working together.
And Jean Lynn.
Hi Salome and Kinsey, so nice to share some space with you both again. Kinsey, I think your project, the Somali Museum project, is so brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to that. Hearing more and seeing that really strong in the public consciousness. I think Salome, like your question and also the framing of this event around activation is such a profound question at this moment in time, because like in my head when I see that word, I think, how do you activate when you are tired and when you need space to just step away from everything? Or what Kinsey was saying about collective healing, where is the space for that healing in order to make that transition to a change which is much more expansive than we could imagine if we just did the same thing. So you mentioned some of the projects I'm involved in, and it feels like I'm working across lots of networks, and that in my head, the way that I think about them is the question of how do we build sustainable community infrastructure? And what does that look like? So what does it mean to bring people together around a specific constellation, be that a lived experience, an identity, a concern, an issue? And how does that group and that constellation make decisions together, learn together, and take action together? So I think whilst I feel like I'm working across many different spaces, that's what I guess the impetus is. And another, I guess, characterization is also thinking about what is the community infrastructure that will help us to get to the future that we want. So I am less and less interested in resistance, and less interested in shouting to mainstream spaces or institutional decision makers, and much more interested in what can we achieve when we build our own ground, we build our own institutions and our own support structures, and what does it mean if we center the imaginations of people who have been historically oppressed. So the groups that I'm working with specifically have experiences of migration, are part of or self-identify with Asian diasporas, and also at the moment people who have been marginalized by the healthcare system. So I guess those are the two steers that I'm thinking about. Yeah.
Amazing. And kind of leads me on to the sort of second prompt I had for you both, which was, what does community organising mean for you? And that's a two-part thing, I guess. Jean, you've just mentioned that some of the communities that you're responding to are defined and happen based on place. So they've, people become migrants. You're not born necessarily a migrant. And also in terms of health and treatment within a healthcare system. So yeah, I guess I'm interested for both of you, what does organising mean?
Do you want to kick off, Kinsey, or should I go?
Yeah, yeah, happy for you to go. I'm either way.
That's right. Yeah, Jean, then right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was introduced to community organizing by a coalition called Citizens UK. And really, if I had to think about what organizing meant for me in a sentence, it would be power with, not power over. And I found that really important to kind of change my attitude to power, and to realize that power could be a really positive thing in the right hands, and that we can do so much more together collectively in terms of power with, and power over, as in many repressive regimes or authoritative ways or hierarchical systems that we work with. That is that system, but we don't need to do that. And I think organizing is that process of shifting from power over to power with. And then I guess I've also been really inspired by science fiction writers recently. And the idea that organizing is actually a science fictional behavior, because to imagine a world which feels more equal, that is more equitable, that is non-capitalistic, that is non-patriarchal, we're actually having to use an incredible amount of our imagination and investing in that imagination to build that world. So I think there's something very beautiful about thinking about our practices as science fictional, and the creativity that comes with that. So those are the two places that I go to when I think about community organizing, very much the question of power, and then the question of, science fictional behavior.
So beautifully put. For me, I think a lot of the time when I think about organizing in the work that I do, for me, it's about disruption. How much can we disrupt? Bring in a mindset of abolition. How can we abolish the system? And not to come to it from a kind of firefighting, because I feel that the last 2 years and this global pandemic have shown us that we are as communities are very organized, a lot of the time more organized than governments. if left alone, I think people are capable of showing our humanity. I think we never needed evidence of that. I feel that we're organized and mobilized. It's just that we have systems set against us and obstacles. And I think these obstacles are put both in front of us and the climate, the home that we collectively have, which is this universe. And I think a lot of for me, it's like, how can we abolish the systems? How can we disrupt the narrative? How can we come? And I think that's the work that I'm trying to do, both in my practice and both in my organizing. And for me, it's every space, every opportunity we had as communities, whether, has been destroyed, and including the home that we collectively shared, is going under extreme violence, and we can't escape that violence. And that is really that's what I'm thinking that I'm doing, is that collective healing, is repairing. And it kind of makes me think that that plant that comes through concrete, we can push, and nature pushes through despite all. And for me, it's that how can we utilize that, be conscious of that, and bring that to the forefront, so we are not used and mixed up and mixed in the cement to build the barriers and blockade our opportunity to thrive, to exist, and resist and abolish the systems. And I just think, a lot of the time is everybody has the power, everybody is capable, including, the 2-year-old child to, the 80-year-old elders, young people. Every single one of us have the power. And I think this pandemic showed us that this minute virus has put a stop to what we have been asking years and years for governments to do. But, and we are paying the price in our communities, we are paying the price. And how can we heal through that? How can we deal with that? And what kind of future can we bring about to make sure that we don't go back to the status quo? So, but that really what organizing means to me, that, when we engage, we all know what we're doing, but just bringing it to the conscience, to make it affirmative, actionable, imaginable, and doable. And I think that's what sometimes is the fear, and I think it's the fear we have because we're plugged into the systems that make us afraid, that brutalize us. So yeah, that's what I think.
So both of you have talked about power, but also about imagination, which I think is quite an interesting one in terms of in order to put something in motion, you have to already be slightly ahead of yourself and ahead of maybe what other people will tell you is possible and is doable. Are there any particular campaigns or people, maybe even of the last year or so, who've managed, and it could be before, because I know that, Julian, you've just mentioned Citizens UK, who I guess have encouraged your imagination, and why? Kinsey.
Yeah. I admire people like Nawala Sadawi, who we unfortunately lost. May she rest in power. This 80-year-old woman single-handedly taking on protesting, speaking her mind, still writing, publishing books that she wrote when she was 8 years old. I found her inspiring. I reread her books always. Yeah, Ngari Maathai, I admired. I found what she's done as an African woman in Kenya, absolutely amazing, and the level of organizing, someone who has given me hope and tools and inspiration. And yeah, I think that really what comes to mind. I think most recently and probably closely, it's our campaign for the Somali Museum during lockdown, when everybody told me, "Are you crazy? People lost their jobs. Is this a bad time? You know, even people with millions are poor." And I'm like, really? And when all our events were cancelled, everything was just, you couldn't, and putting that crowdfunding together, and then finding that not only do we reach our target over one weekend, but we over-raised 6,000 more, which was just amazing. I think this campaign, taking on a building that costs £600,000 to making that possible for our community to set up a museum, and that's our latest campaign. And I think how people have been mobilized and rally around and want to make things doable. I think things like that admire me, because I admire the possibility when you're at your lowest, thinking that actually, and people kind of say to you, "That's crazy, that's never going to happen," to kind of think, well, wherever there's a will, there's a way. And like I said, that kind of flower coming through the concrete, that we can push through. And if we can stop the developers from making us all homeless, we will fight, and we will create space for us to survive within our communities.
That's really beautiful list of people and movements and campaigns, Kinsey. Yeah. In terms of imagination, I think actually I'm being pushed to imagine by being very stuck. I feel very stuck and overwhelmed in a lot of ways. And I've been looking into conflict transformation and peace building as an area of work through a friend and peace builder, Claire Doran. And one of the things that was really useful in some of the resources she shared with me was that conflict is normal. We have to realize conflict is normal, but what does it mean to be curious about conflict? And how can conflict become a learning experience and push us into a different transformation? And so I think I can name a list of people who have inspired me, like Healing Justice, Adrienne Marie Brown, Octavia Butler, lots of people, a lot in America as well as the UK. But I think what I've found inspiration is really dealing with my own stuckness and dealing with the conflicts inside of me, as well as in relationship with others. and this and what this can tell me. So, you know, what does it mean to be a Southeast Asian woman? What does solidarity look like with Black women? What does it mean to be a migrant? And in relationship to European or non-European migrants. Yeah, like I feel like all of these things are really knotty, and it allows me to find a greater positionality of who I am and the things that I share with other people, but also the differences, and not to eradicate those differences, but to really look at where are those tensions and what can be done to not soften them, but to understand why they exist and what I can do, but from this body rather than an abstract person. Yeah, so I think that's required a lot of imagination from me, and that imagination is actually inside of me. It's really deep. You know, and I try to let myself write more now, and reflect on what I'm feeling and what my body is processing. And I am beginning to trust that much more, what my body is telling me.
Feels like an understanding of where you are at as a person, and as also as part of a broader ecosystem. The next couple of points are slightly towards that stickiness and that knottiness, particularly in terms of this sort of thing around where art and activism kind of meets. So and this is to you both, are you worried about the co-option of movements and causes by the artistic world, and what can be done to ensure this involvement, particularly within the subsidised arts, is meaningful? Yeah, Kinsey, what?
I think that thing that worries me most, that I found most problematic in both, I suppose, where my practice meets the work that I'm doing, is being tokenized. I find that very problematic, especially when work is scarce, when we are dealing with lack, when we don't have space. I find that very difficult to deal with. And I think in my younger artist time, I went on residencies and I had a studio, and I can kind of disappear. And I find that now that I don't have a studio space, I don't have space at all, apart from my kitchen table, looking out the window. And how build up the environments that we are in where I live in Tower Hamlets is, and amount of development, road closure or whatever, it is very hard to manage, and it's very hard to articulate, to kind of, you know, wish, why can't I just go back? I'm just tired. Genuinely just tired. And sometimes, and I think that's what having an active creative process and space to kind of sit back, I think gave me. And I think now I'm kind of, yeah. I think I find that difficult and very kind of suffocating, to kind of think, I don't want to fight every battle. I don't have to educate people. I don't want to keep explaining. I'm not a politician. I'm just somebody who is active in my community. Call it voluntary work, call it whatever. I just, it's like there's a broken glass on the road. I make it my job to move it out of the way. And I just think it's that, bringing that to the bigger issue to kind of think, wow, you know, when you tokenize, I think it does something to you that, you know, it's not good and it's quite violent. And and you don't want to completely withdraw as an artist. You want to be active, you want to be imaginative, and you almost kind of that thing where you can't give what you don't have. So I think that I found very difficult to even talk about it now.
Yeah. I think that question of tokenization is huge, and often, speaking as someone who does programming and this sort of thing, is I think a question that will always remain, and there's a responsibility there for those of us who have slightly more kind of administrative roles, working with artists, engaging with artists, to kind of meet them on the level that you are at, rather than treating you like a jewel in our crown. Like, there's this sense of ownership, which again maybe ties into that thing around power. When that happens, and when you are aware that that's the terms in which you're being engaged with, there's a shift there. It's less of an exchange, less of a you've got fantastic ideas, you maybe have access to people that aren't on our radar, and we respect that, rather than we're going to just try and see through, it could have been anybody. Yeah. I'm just saying that, and I haven't provided an answer for that. But Jean-Lynn, I know that some of the work that you've done has also been about like co-option of these of large social causes within art spaces. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think so. One of the networks I'm involved in, Migrants in Culture, really began with conversations with other migrants who were being sick of exactly what Kinsey was saying, co-opted for their color of their skin or their internationalism, and then at the same hand, not being supported structurally in terms of visas, financial support, knowledge about migration and the experience of and difficulties of migrating. So there was always this dissonance between what people wanted on their shiny programs and then what they were not willing to do to really support the actual person that was associated with this image. And we were really angry. And that just turned into many questions. And those questions turned into what were the real problems that we were facing on a structural level, which we could name as, alongside, you know, structural racism, the whole legal system, which was the hostile, or is the hostile environment set of policies. And in the summer of 2019, we surveyed the culture sector and some of the on the impact of the hostile environment on cultural production. And it was really obvious that, like, there were statistics like 90% of the people we surveyed were like angry or fearful of the hostile environment and were being experienced racial profiling and discrimination as a result of that. And on the flip side, a really big statistic as well, like almost 60% of senior management didn't have any knowledge about the hostile environment. So one, you have the lived experience of immigration regimes, and then on the other hand, an entire structural system of the cultural sector in which leadership did not know anything about immigration. And that goes right to the top in the subsidized sector. So what we've been trying to do is to, in part, educate, and we released an advocacy pack this summer looking at what does the recovery of the culture sector look like if it focused on migrants. And it had, suggestions like ring fence money from your cultural recovery funds, funding budgets to legal support and mental health of migrants. Bring all your outsourced contracts in-house and end all 0-hour contracts. Reject the Festival 2022, which is a nationalistic branding exercise that co-ops cultural production. And, really invest in advocating for the end of the hostile environment permanently. So those were some things that we put in, but what traction they have, we don't know. And we are beginning to question, like, is it our role to educate the cultural sector? All this information is actually out there in the public. And so my question to creating more meaningful collaborations with movement spaces is like really for people to like question what matters to you, like from your own body, what is important to you, what really like wakes you up at night. And I think given this last year, we can see how interconnected we really are and who we really depend on. And just to like start right from your own body and make those connections and really understand and invest in learning and understanding about other people's experiences and connect it to yourself. And then if you want to think about how you can transform the organizations and the networks that you're in to really embody your own values and those things that you care about. I think sometimes activism looks like being loud on social media, but actually it starts from the home and it starts from your own body. And I think that's when it becomes more meaningful, when you really invest in that and you change the structures that you're in, like personally.
I'm just this will be the last kind of prompt bit before I open up to the floor. So if you have been having some thoughts or questions, please do pop them in the Q&A section. But that there is a tension at the moment, in particular in the world of the subsidised arts, in terms of a fear of being maybe party political or overly political, given the way that charity law works, for instance. Have you encountered this tension in the work that you've made, of being either too political to be doing art? Kinsey?
Always. Always, but I just find it unjustifiable because I feel that our existence is political, and in order for us to express the things that we have difficulty getting around, I feel that the way things are set up, I just feel that those things only apply to us, and they're not applied across the board to everybody. And I just feel it's just a great injustice, because for me to say I'm a woman, if that's political, or to say that I am a Black woman, if that's political, I can't accommodate for everybody's colorblindness. I can't deny my need and my existence, and the things that inform who we are, and the things that we are grappling with. If that doesn't come through the work that we do, I just think sometimes it's yeah, I don't even know how to, I don't even know how to understand it, you know. I mean, I remember applying for like artist support and being told the work that you do is political. And I'm like, how? You know, I've never even called myself activist, you know. Um, you know, for a long time, I mean, I've just made work in my community. And I mean, before it was like, oh, this is like community art and you know, but every now and again, things kind of change and shift. And I just feel that in a society that actually denies the existence of institutional racism, the hostile environment, the things that you know we are subjected to, the exclusion, you know, the ableism, the ageism, all these kind of things. If we were to remove all those things and go into a neutral place, I don't even know what that looks like. So I've in the past I've just kind of ignored it. So you know I've got these rejection letters. In fact, I now stack them up in a folder. I feel that maybe that's going to be my next project. I haven't even got the energy. I just file them into dates, and I just okay that came through. And before you used to send a letter, now you get an email. So I like print them out and you know put them in the file because I haven't really understood like even when we registered our company, you know, for a long time, you know, we didn't even have a bank account. We didn't have, I mean, you know, we just tried to avoid the kind of structures, which I think is problematic. Like now, even they talk about, oh, you know, people don't want to take the vaccine, people don't want to trust the government, people, you know, and you think, well, you for years and years and years, you exclude people, you oppress people, you misinform people, you know. I mean, how do we, you know? And I just think for me, it is problematic whichever way we look at it. So I kind of like, yeah, activist, yes, I am doing political work, yes, I am, you know, just like and go through it. But then I just think, well, somebody's got to do it, and somebody's got to say it. And I think I have an artistic license. I'm going to use it, and yeah, jail us all. You know, but the reality is that you know we're a human being. I think for a long time, I mean, I'm not even one like to have exhibitions or you know like I've never really want to like to put myself forward. I think sometimes for me the work that I do is collective. I've always worked in a kind of in that way anyway. Our tools and pedagogy and the way that we work is very you know collaborative and expansive, and so you know I try not to apply that to myself, but I know, but it is a problem. And I don't even know how, like we're registered in the museum as a charity. And yeah, I'm fearful, but it just means we'll have to, we'll have to get around some things and yeah, and disrupt the system.
Yeah, so just following on from Kinsey, this question of it's kind of hard to even ask what does it mean to not be political, because our existence is political. And then maybe another way of saying it is, you know, who benefits when you're neutral? Like who's actually gaining a benefit when you decide not to speak out? Who benefits when you decide, oh, that issue's not connected to me, so I'm not going to do anything? You know, who benefits when a big festival celebrates a united kingdom? Like, and what are the consequences of that simplification of our existence and that forced positivity or that forced neutrality? And I think it's a question that, again, another fantastic sci-fi writer, Susan Butler, an artist, sort of said in Migrants and Culture Activation Day. It's like, who benefits when we do not gather and when we do not use our imagination? And I think that's a different way of approaching this question of the problems of being political. What are the consequences if we're not being political? And when, political does not mean party political. Political means imagining a different kind of way of being with others and sharing this planet, right? So there are questions and difficulties about how you negotiate it. Sure, like the Conservative government at the moment is creating this narrative, this war on woke. They're trying to minimize the power of the arts sector. They're trying to tie strings around it. And same with the Charity Commission. Okay, so now there's a threat to how political charities can be. These are explicit strategies by a Conservative government. So rather than thinking, can't get political because, we can't do that. That's a really bureaucratic way of thinking about it. It's more, how can we be super creative about getting around these barriers, which we know are specific strategies? Like, how can we be creative in really standing up for our own values and being happy with how we are existing in this world? And I think that is getting around those barriers and being creative is also part of the same thing of not prescribing social aims for artists to kind of achieve. So for your commissions, for your programs, don't put artists into a box where they must talk about XYZ in order to get funding. That's a different kind of prescription, which is also not beneficial. And I think that's where the suspicion comes in, where the art world feels as though it's activism is co-opting them, because it's two sides, isn't it? I think there's a lot of detail to that, and there's a lot of simplification to even the term art and activism.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I've got a question that's come in. A couple of questions. So I'll start with the first one, which was, how does the cultural sector avoid tokenism while still wanting to tell the stories of their artists? I'll start with Jean Lynn, just because you've got kind of a producing background, and then we'll go on to Kinsey.
Can you say the question again?
Yeah. How does the cultural sector avoid tokenism while still wanting to tell the stories of their artists?
I think it's who's in leadership, and it's how artists choose to frame their work, platform their work, and what the process is for the making of that work. I think the problem is when you have an entirely white organization, white middle-class ableist organization, for example, just hypothetical organization, then platforming XYZ number of artists of color. And what happens is that it's front-loaded, and that means tokenism. But if there is a way to really look at the structures of your organization and question why it's so monocultural and what it means for artists of color to have much more leadership over that organization, much more engagement, then I think that program would look very different. And I think the ownership of that program would be very different. And hence there wouldn't be the same question of tokenism. But that is a long process, and it's not just about the external facade of a program, but it's much more about the internal work within it.
Kinsey, how about for you?
Well, for me, it's about agency. I think if I bring a project to you, to organization in February, and it ticks all their boxes, and they say to me, but then, you know, say no, but then come to me in October and say, it's Black History Month. You know, do you want to bring that project now? I find that terrible. I find that defeating, and that happens all the time. I find that if I bring a project to you, like I need in space, and it's not possible. I apply for funding to do the project that I want to do. We want to do a project that I want to produce, and you are turned down all the time and you're ignored. But yeah, you'll come to me to do something, to kind of decorate something on your program. I think that's problematic. I think reducing artists into glitter, sprinkle, I think it's terrible, and it needs to stop. It needs to, we need to think about, and these institutions, and it's about leadership, and it's about who's running these organizations. It's about having the empathy, the understanding, consciousness, and aware, and being aware. You know, it's like booking an artist to do a project in a space when you know they're in a wheelchair in a place that's not accessible. It's so many, there's so many different things that happen all the time that are just institutional, and the culture sector has got away with it all the time, and it's got to stop. It can't be we just do an engagement program to kind of like, you know, address our lack of diversity. And then when that's finished, you know, and then we kind of like forget about that for 20 years. And then we find that actually you don't employ anybody. You don't have a single Black or brown, you know, and any diverse artist of any background in your whole institution, made up of 2,000-3,000 people. Not even the doorman or the doorwoman or person. And then you come to a small arts organization to address your problem. It's terrible, and it shouldn't happen. It can't be. It can't carry on. It can't continue to happen in that way without us kind of like calling it out and to say no. And expressing that. And I find that tokenizing, it's not good. But then every report, like with McPherson report, the commission, you know, everything that tells you, every single report, research that's done, you know, in the sector, we ignore continuously. I find that problematic.
I think I'll very briefly, that question was a really interesting one, because it reminded me of something that happened to me relatively recently, which was that I write a newsletter, and I got an email from a fellow newsletter writer who's a white writer and artist, and said that they have implemented this thing where every month they'll platform someone who isn't white, person of color, who's doing work, and would I be happy with that? And the reason I didn't reply to that was because it was framed in a way of almost like a charitable transaction, as opposed to people who work in the arts will know that there's PS swaps. So I might then big up your thing, and we're sort of in dialogue with each other, rather than I'm going to bestow this spotlight on you, possibly for reasons to do with guilt or something else. One final brief question. Oh, I've just seen something in the chat. I will just answer this one, which was, is it possible for arts organisations not to tick box while still supporting artists to be active. So I guess it's kind of less around identity in terms of tokenizing, but more to do with embracing the political and engaged nature of artists.
Yes, I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I think it's very possible.
That feels like quite a fair way to end it. I think I would agree, hopefully, or else this project has been ill-conceived. I'll pass on to Emma, but thank you so much to both Gina and Kinsey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hello, thank you so much. Our existence is political, as Jean said, and I really liked the collective healing, the plant that comes through the concrete, we can push through, as Kinsey was saying. Thank you so much to June Go and Kinsey Abdullah for a beautiful, inspiring and crucial conversation, which is actually an excellent provocation for the start of our exchange programme. And we just need to keep talking. These conversations are so important. So thank you to you and to our audience for joining us. Please do come back. The exchange will be happening over the next 10 weeks, normally at this time on a Thursday. Next week we have 2 events coming up on Thursday. One of them is a panel talk like this, a conversation under the title of 6 months to COP26, an alternative briefing, which will be hosted by Shante Joseph. And we're also co-hosting a listening party with Oxford Contemporary Music later on that evening. So find further details on our website, which is seasonforchange.org.uk. So once again, thank you very much, everyone. This has been absolutely brilliant, and we look forward to seeing you again over the next few weeks. Thank you.